It is not just that Trump is a serial cheater at everything, whose heroes are murderous dictators. It's so much worse than that. Trump is an incoherent, incompetent, criminally corrupt, willfully ignorant, amoral, unfaithful, unethical, crooked, fraudulent, narcissistic, pathological liar, racist, fascist, shyster, a business failure, dangerous science denier, and demented traitor with the reading level, speech, and intellectual capacity of a fourth grader, with no comprehension, no compunction, no conscience, no awareness of history or geography, no appreciation for or understanding of science, and no concern for the environment either. Those are words that was written in an article about 3 years ago, about 4 years ago actually, when Trump was first elected. And they're every bit as true today. Nothing's changed. He hasn't become presidential. He has not become, moral in any sense of the word. He's been enabled to do what his worst instincts tell him to do. It's all about him. It's not about you. He doesn't care about you. I'm talking to you with a MAGA hat on. You flying a Confederate flag for whatever reason. I'm talking about you who thinks they're going to take away your coal job. It's not about you who thinks that the liberals are just going to, let all the Mexicans over the border. It's not about you. Trump only does everything he does for himself. Now, everybody's crying about Antifa this, Black Lives Matter that. First of all, Antifa just means anti-fascist. Fascism on the checklist of things to do to set yourself up for fascism. First, you have to have a powerful and overbearing to a point sense of nationalism, where what you're doing is you're setting up, basically, you're doing this for your country. Your love for the country is so strong that everything you will do is for it. Now that you've set that guideline, everybody who is following you will believe that everything you do after that is for the good of the nation. First, what you do, you scapegoat and you identify enemies. Mexicans are coming over the border. They're rapists, they're drug dealers, and they're coming to destroy your suburban households, your communities. You always point to somebody else's fault, them. You have to ban the Muslims from coming in here. It's these radical leftists who want to give you health care and education. So radical. You start touting how strong your military is. No doubt about, America has the strongest military in the world. By far. Something like, we have a higher military budget than the next 12 countries combined, 12 of our allies combined. The next 12 countries that spend on their military underneath us are our allies, and we spend more than them combined. That's ridiculous, but then you go out and you tout how nobody can hurt us because we're number one in the in the world, and we are. But in my opinion, that's not really something to brag about that much. You obsess about national security. That's why you got to build that wall. Where is that wall, by the way? Mexicans didn't pay for it, that's for sure. There's a few, dozen miles or so of repaired fencing and a couple of miles of walls that are falling down because the contractors were terrible. One of the worst things on the road to fascism. And one of the early steps is you belittle and you insult the institution of our press, our media. You attack them constantly. You take away their power. And what power does the media have? The power to hold those in power accountable. That's their job. That's their only job. Now, over the years, the media has become a lot more looser term. Almost anybody with a camera can give an opinion, and they can almost be considered a media. But what I'm talking about is just the actual journalists, actual press. Those are actually doing reporting and telling stories. When you try to discredit them, and he admitted this, that why do you think I try to discredit you? So when I talk about you, or when you say something, the people won't believe you. He said it outright. When you destroy the press, you destroy the people's faith in the truth. How do we know what things are true? You have to get something that, journalism is originally supposed to be just, you find out what the story is, you find out what the information is, and you tell it to the people. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, granted, there's always been media biases. There's always been media that would shift a narrative to suit certain purposes. Now, there's always good and bad media. That's always going to be the thing. However, now in the age of cable media, cable news, they're not exactly 100% news. They're opinion shows. They're talking heads. They're analysts. They're not really giving news. Most of them, they tell you what happened during the day, what's going on, but then they give their opinion about it. Whenever a journalist is giving an opinion on something, that is swaying your listeners' views. No doubt about it. Fox News is key to all this. They're the ones that have set up this base of people to be perfect fodder for our president right now. That's not to say that these people didn't exist before Fox News. No, there's always people who had the mindset of looking for other people to blame, looking for a figure of authority to look up to listen to believe no matter what they say. There's always been people who have bigotry in their hearts and would use that to shape how they live their lives. There's always been people, of course, hating hippies or hating, tree huggers or hating environmentalists. And those are all people that Fox News have been courting ever since their inception. And if you ask me, our current president has watched that and seen, I can manipulate those people just as Fox News has manipulated them. And that's what he's been doing this whole time. It's all manipulation. It's all, if you say things enough, repeat things enough, it becomes a sort of truth. Whether it's true or not, it's not going to be true. But if you say it enough people are going to start believing it. Moving on with the list of ways you can become fascist. You start intertwining religion and government. You see this constantly now. Every televangelist out there are praying to have this man reelected. They're putting their own opinions to their constituents, to their pulpit, to their flock, that you have to still continue to support this man. He is ordained by God for some reason. That's not really what religion was supposed to be, you know, especially not the way our Constitution is supposed to have, the relationship with religion. We're supposed to have a separation of church and state. You're supposed to have the freedom of religion. You're free to believe whatever you want, as long as you don't hurt anybody. But when you have a whole segment of a religious sect that is wholly ingrained and intertwined with one political party out of a two-party system, that's going to be a problem. And I don't know how to untwine them. It wasn't always like this. Religious people were never on one party or another. They just cared about, don't, mess with my religion. And I'll vote for whoever doesn't mess with my religion. And then things started happening where Republicans started to court religious people they shifted their policies as a whole that would appeal to religious people. So now, decades later, you cannot separate the two. The R in Republican stands for religious in these people's minds. I don't think that's true, because it's not true, because obviously out of everybody in Congress, the Senate, most presidents, all presidents, as far as we're aware, they've all been one religion or another. There has yet to be any atheist or agnostic president ever, to our knowledge. There were some deists early on in our founding of our country. Thomas Jefferson, for one. But the way we have it now, it's very hard to be non-religious and hold political power, be a politician. Because if you're not religious and you try to be a politician, that would be, ammunition for the opposing person. That would be so easy for them to sway voters away from you, saying that this person does not believe in God, they are evil. Anyways, moving on. You protect corporate power. It's obvious. Look at the over $2 trillion in tax cuts they've given to the 1% and corporations in this country. Give them more money, give them more power, open up your pockets for them so they can buy your election, and to make sure that you, as a politician, stay in power. They rub your back so you can stay in power. You rub their back so they can gain more profits. But fuck the little man. Just piss on him. Who cares? This one also irks me. A disdain for intellectuals and the arts. You can see this plain as day. Today, we have a virus that is easily transmissible, through breathing on people, through the air, through your breath, spittle. And we have an infectious disease expert who is trying to give his knowledge and his expertise, that he's been at this for decades. You have one side of the political spectrum trying to discredit that person, making fun of him, threatening to fire him for what? Because he doesn't kiss the ass of the president? No, he's just trying to do his job and try to save lives. As of today, there's been 231,000 deaths associated with the COVID-19 virus. Some people will say, that's not a lot. It's a lot, but it's not that a lot. It's a very small percentage of the country. Most people survive the coronavirus. That's what they'll tell you. Some of that is true. A lot of people will survive the coronavirus if they get it. However, if you survive it, we're still learning this, but there's a lot of detrimental health effects after the fact. After you survive it, say if you have asthma, your lung capacity is going to get shot if you survive it. You're going to be in worse shape than before. Brain functions. They say that after you have it, it's like you're in a fog. That your limited capacity. They also say that your immune system is compromised. Just a whole range of effects that we're still learning about. And a lot of people are saying there are lifelong effects. So when you discredit a scientist who worked his whole life studying this very thing, and you say, I watched a YouTube video that said something different, I'm not going to believe the scientist. I'll believe this YouTube video. What does that say about you as a person? Deny climate change is a thing. We can see the effects every year getting worse. The rise in global temperature on average is going up. There's no denying that. It's as clear as gravity. You know, we know if we hold something and we drop it, it's going to fall to the earth. We know that the climate is changing and it is human caused. There's a saying that a lot of people would say that kind of it's a little misleading. They will say 97% of the scientists agree that climate change is real and is caused by humans. That's kind of a vague and simplistic way of looking at it. It's not 97% of scientists. 97% of scientific papers, of about 14,000 papers on the subject of climate change, wholly agree that climate change is a thing and is caused by humans. Peer-reviewed scientific papers, it's undisputable. Now, the rest of the 3% of the papers, when you look at them, they're not exactly credible. You know, a couple hundred papers here and there. Still, if you were to go into a doctor's office and they said, you have a condition and I have a solution here that works for 97% of the people I give it to. Would you believe that, doctor? I would think you would, because that's a pretty high percentage that the doctor knows what he's talking about. That's his job. That's what climate scientists' jobs are, to study the climate and to find out what's going on with it and report the effects. Come to a conclusion. Facts don't care about your feelings. The good thing about science is that it's true whether you believe in it or not. But we have a whole segment of our population led by this president of ours who straight up says, I don't think science knows when talking about climate change. It will get cooler. You'll see. That's what he said straight up to a scientist telling him that the warming climates, the drier air around California is affecting the wildfires are making them worse. There's going to be fires. There's always been wildfires in, heavily forest, dry areas, but they're getting bigger and worse every year. Death Valley hit 130 degrees this year in like August, I think. Now, Death Valley is going to be pretty hot all the time. That's what it's called, Death Valley. But it never hit 130 degrees. That's the highest temperature ever recorded in modern history. But just overall, not believing science at all, discrediting them. Earth is 6,000 years old. That's the type of mindset that, you don't want to look at the facts. You don't want to look at the evidence. So you're already set up to just believe things that feel right, not exactly are right. The obsession with crime and punishment. That is a big one. Our president is constantly looking to jail and arrest anybody who disagrees with him or has been unfair to him. They should arrest all these fake media. They should arrest. He wanted to arrest his political opponents. For what? First, he wanted to lock up Hillary Clinton. Lock her up, lock her up. For what? To be locked up, you have to do a crime. And so far, there's been no evidence that a crime was committed. Not by Hillary. People will say, oh, she kills people. Never seen evidence of it. And I hate the woman. But I don't want her locked up because she hasn't done anything. Not that I know of. He wants to lock up Obama. He wants to lock up Joe Biden. You're calling for locking up your political opponents. If that doesn't scream fascism, I don't know what does. You want to open up libel laws. So if anybody says anything bad about him, he can sue the pants off them. Corruption. Rampant corruption. We've always had corruption in this country. Always. It's always been a thing ever since pretty much the beginning. Because power begets power. The more power you hope to acquire, the more you want to hold on to that power by any means necessary. So, of course, just going back to like the corporate power and, greed, and it's all about who can grease whose palms to stay in that power. I've never ran for office myself, but I have a hard time imagining that anybody would go into power, go into office, wanting to be corrupt. There's something in our system that makes them corrupt. I'm figuring most people who go into office, especially if they start at the low level, if they want to be a local representative, they just want to do something good for their community. They have good intentions. Somewhere along the lines, they say, I need to run more ads. I need to get out the word so people know who I am, so they can vote for me. How do I do that? Well, I need money. Well, I can go knock on doors, but this company over here, or this rich person over there, they said they'll give me money so I can run my ads. Okay, great. That sounds easier. I'll do that. Hey, look, I'm elected now. The knock at the door, it's that company that gave you money. It's that billionaire that gave you money. They want a favor. Exactly how it happens. And if you don't do that favor, they're not going to give you money next time. And they might give money to your opponent. So you might not be in power for very long. exactly how it happens, how it starts. So you play into their hands. You go, okay, what do you want? You know, please give me donations for next time. That's how corruption starts. Now, of course, there's also another form of corruption, and you see it, of course, with our current president. He he was a businessman, so he was already at that level of corruption. He was already um, donating thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to other politicians throughout his whole career. So he knows how it works. We all know how it works, but he knows how it works because he's the one greasing the palms. You know, he wasn't always a Republican. If you look at his political affiliations, what he was registered as throughout his years, when he was living in New York, most of his life he was a Democrat. Sometimes he switched to non-affiliated or independent, but most of the time he was a Democrat. And mostly he would be whatever party the mayor of the city of New York was, just so he can cozy up to the mayor of the city of New York, and so he can get what he wants for his buildings and his companies. That's exactly why. He only became a Republican because he saw how to manipulate the Republican Party, how to demonize President Obama, that he wasn't born in this country, and he used that as fuel to get attention. He wasn't using it as fuel to run for election. He never wanted to be president. He wanted to just get more attention to himself. And it worked. Now, today is November 3rd. It is the first Tuesday of the month, which means it's election day in 2020. One of the last steps to fascism is you hold fraudulent elections. You try to discredit the election as much as possible. Whatever it is, he straight up said it. If I lose, you know that the election was rigged. How about the election is just an election? People vote, someone wins, someone loses. What if Biden was the first person to say that? If he came out and said first, if I do not win, it's rigged. Republicans' heads would, oh my God, this left-wing socialist is trying to discredit the election, our bastion of democracy. But Trump can say it. And he says it constantly. He put in knowing, because of coronavirus, that mail-in ballots would be key to this election. A lot of people weren't going to walk to the polls, stand in line, cough on people, be in people's air, and vote. People did do that, but a lot of people did not want to do that. Me especially. We want to mail in our votes, mail in our ballots. A lot of states allow mail in ballots. It's been a thing for many, many years. It works, it happens, and there's no problem with it. Republicans will tell you otherwise. They've been telling you for years, for decades, that voter fraud is a thing, and they try to do these things to mitigate voter fraud. What our current president is doing is just the next evolutionary step of that mindset. Republicans have always gerrymandered districts to take away voting power from minorities and the people who they know they don't want to vote for them, Democratic counties, so they can shift balance of power towards them. They do things like enact voter ID laws, that You can't just go in there and say who you are. You have to bring like multiple forms of ID to prove who you are. Because if you're John Smith, there are 50 other John Smiths behind you. How do I know you're John Smith that you say that you are? It's kind of a valid point, but that's not how this is supposed to work. Voting should be the easiest thing in the world to do. Now, of course, you want to have the voting secure so it doesn't get bad, doesn't get fraudulent. But what was the estimate? From in about 2 billion votes over a span of however many years what years it was like 1996 to 2016 or something like that. Out of all those votes, they could only confirm about 100 of them that was actual fraudulent votes. An extremely small percentage that was not going to change anything in the slightest. It's not. There's no such thing as rampant voter fraud. Some people are going to do some fraud, but that's a very small percentage. You can't throw out an entire electorate system just because 0.00001% of the votes could be fraudulent. Could be. You can't just go out there and say people are going to mail in their votes. They're going to vote twice. Everybody's going to vote twice. Everybody's going to vote for with their dog's name. They're going to vote with their dead grandmother's name. You know what a risk it is to commit a voter fraud? That's jail time. People have gone to jail. There are very few people who committed voter fraud. They've gone to jail. It's not worth the risk to make one vote into 2 or 3. So people don't do it generally. So it's not a thing. So you can't just go out there and say people mailing in their votes, it's going to invite voter fraud in here, and just leave it at that. You have to provide evidence of it. If you make a claim that's not true, you have to provide your side of the evidence. Don't just say it and hope that people accept it. You also don't go and discount any vote that comes in after Election Day. Remember, Election Day is just the very last day that you can vote. It doesn't mean that all the votes need to be counted on that day. Especially since if you're in the military, you're overseas, you have to mail in your vote. And if your vote comes in Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, later, you would hope you want that vote counted, right? There are some states that, for some stupid reason or other, cannot even start counting their vote till today. They've been having early voting for weeks, but they can't even start counting them till today. That's stupid. So he thinks, for some reason, at 8 o'clock on Tuesday night, whatever the vote count is at, we can stop it there and no other votes will be counted. That's not how elections work. It's not. So he's doing everything he can to discredit this election so he can stop the count where he wants it and have him appointed just like Bush was. That's part of the reason why they pushed for a new Supreme Court after Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away about 6 weeks ago. It's the only reason why I think they pushed for her so badly. Well, there was 2 reasons. One, hopefully she could have been a swing, decision on this election if they decided to go to the Supreme Court for the election, decision. And also, Mitch McConnell knew that this election might change the balance of power in the Senate, that he might not have power anymore after this election, that there might be a blue wave and he won't be a majority leader anymore. There'll be Democrats in there. And if there's Democrats in there, they wouldn't have confirmed anybody. So he had to get it in there before he lost his power. There's other things that just reek of fascism, where you see your supporters doing horrible things and you encourage it. Even before he was elected, he would have, some protesters at his rallies. Not even protesters. Some were just people that were the wrong shade. Maybe they were wearing a burqa. Not a burqa, but like a head wrap. And they just wanted to listen to Trump speak just to see what he's about. But he would have them thrown out of his rallies. Some people got boisterous. Some people got loud. Some people fought back, to not be thrown out. He told his people, knock the crap out of him, and I will pay your legal fees. He encouraged it. He encouraged his supporters to attack his dissenters. And he said he would pay their legal fees. Now, I highly doubt he did any of that. I'm sure there were some that might have had legal troubles, but he never paid a dime for it because he's a consummate liar. But even till today, just this last weekend alone, there was a traveling bus for the Biden campaign with a couple of their aides in other vehicles driving down the road in Texas. Now, and I've seen this in many cities, and even my own, where they have a Trump train, a caravan of vehicles, mostly big old pickup trucks, good old American muscle, with Trump flags hanging off the backs of them. And they get into big groups and they love to, honk their horns and make a big rally. That's fine. If they want to just be boisterous, it makes them look like idiots, if you ask me. But in Texas, they kept following the Biden bus and all their other vehicles that were traveling with them, and they're getting pretty close to them. Very much tailgating them, slowing them down, pretty much looking like they wanted to run the bus off the road. And at one point, one truck swerved to his left and did hit another vehicle, a vehicle of one of Biden's campaign staffs. The damage was clear to see. It happened. But our president said, that was a beautiful thing what people in Texas did. Texas is great. And he also went on to say that these great patriots, we're just trying to escort them. What a great thing for them to do. He encouraged it. He, of course, downplayed exactly what happened. He lied about what happened. They weren't escorting them. These supporters of his were harassing these campaign staffers on the road, trying to cause an accident, just being dickheads. And Trump encouraged it. And speaking of downplaying, who by now doesn't see him downplaying the virus? Going back to the virus. And going back to discounting science and evidence. They have him on tape speaking to Bob Woodward, saying that I've always wanted to downplay it. Here's how bad it is. But of course I'm going to downplay it. Who says that? He said he did it because he didn't want to create a panic. I mean, no one wants to create panic. But you have to be honest when something like this is happening. But here's the thing. It's not that he didn't want to create a panic with the American people. Again, he doesn't give a shit about American people. He didn't want to create a panic on Wall Street. He didn't want to make the stock market panic because of a deadly virus that was going to come here and ruin the economy because people couldn't work because they had to, shut down. That's all he's thinking about. He's thinking about himself. He's thinking about his rich friends, and how they can keep getting richer. I've been talking for a long time. Today is a very important day. It's, without a doubt, the most important election of our lifetimes. Even my father, who is in his 70s, he said he'd never seen anything like this before. It's the most important thing to get this man out of office. And I know that doesn't, say too well about the Joe Biden campaign. About, it's like, oh, well, I'm not telling you to go vote for Biden. I'm telling you to go vote against Trump. That's how shitty our politics have gotten, that I can't muster enough enthusiasm for Biden other than to say that he's not Trump. So vote for the not Trump person. Granted, I have no problem with Joe Biden. He's a likable person. He's very personable. He's a little creepy with, coming behind people and like sniffing their hair. I do not think that he's ever, sexually assaulted anybody that, some people say that he did, or he's not a child molester. I do not believe any of that. However, as bad as even those accusations are, you can say the same thing about Trump. He looked like he wanted to have sex with his daughter, when his daughter was like 14. Come on. But Biden is a centrist. He's not my type of candidate. But if this is the best we can get, I'll take him. I know he's going to not be all that great on the wars that we have overseas. He's going to be kind of a war hawkish. Most of them are. Most politicians are going to be. I'm hoping that he might, bring our troops home. Maybe. I know he's not keen on Medicare for all. As much as Bernie Sanders and all the other progressives try to pull him their way, to look at Medicare for all. He used Republican talking points of, it's too expensive. That's not true. It's not too expensive. It's less expensive than what we're paying now for our medical coverage across the country. Anyway, he wants to expand Obamacare. Fine. That's better than what Trump is trying to do. Trump is trying to get rid of Obamacare. He's trying to take it away. He's trying to take away your health care. Even though he says, oh, I have a better plan. Where is it? But Biden, because Obamacare is not perfect, and it never was. It was Romney care. It was a Republican wrote plan that Obama implemented and passed, and Republicans for some reason want to get rid of it ever since. Why? Don't know. It's a Republican plan. Why are Republicans trying to get rid of it? But since it has problems, I would like to see those problems get fixed. When you get a flat tire in your car, you don't throw the whole car out. You get the tire fixed. You fix the problems, if you can be fixed. I know also Biden would be hell of a lot better on the environment because he at least understand that the environment is important and climate change is a thing and you have to do something about it. How far he'll go with that, I don't know. I know he's not too keen also on the Green New Deal, but Will he take some elements of the Green New Deal and implement them in his administration? I hope so. We all hope so. I know for a fact that he will be worlds better than what we have now. We have now a guy who, he opened up our national parks, sections of our national parks, to drillers, natural gas and oil drillers. Protected lands he opened up. That's fucking wrong. Trump got out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Now the agreement wasn't biting. It wasn't all that great, but at least it was something. But he pulled out of it for no reason because he's a dick. Biden will at least listen to scientists on how to handle the pandemic. That's for certain. Is he gonna shut down the whole country and then keep everybody in quarantine until it's all over? No, he's not going to do that. What he'll do is he'll strongly urge states to do what's necessary to keep this virus contained. If some parts of the country have to shut down or have to be in limited capacity to limit the spread, so be it. Is he going to mandate masks for everybody? No, but he'll strongly encourage it. They had stupid people who straight up said, Trump says he's not going to wear a mask, I'm not going to wear a mask. Wear a fucking mask, people. They work. Simple as that. Nothing is 100% perfect. Unless you're in a hermetically sealed bunker underground, nothing is perfect. But masks at least slow the spread. And that's what we want to do. We want to slow the spread of this virus before we have a vaccine. Because remember, a vaccine is going to take a long time to manufacture, to distribute, and it's not even. We don't even know if one was available that works. We're still testing it, and testing takes a long time. So until we have that, do what you can to avoid getting it. Because if you get it, you're hospitalized. That's hospital staff that might get infected, or you're going to be away from your families. There's so many stories of people who died in a hospital with no one around because they were in a pretty much their own room that a nurse couldn't even come in. They were just sitting there for weeks and weeks dying with no family to be there with them. That's what coronavirus is doing. You don't want to get coronavirus, you say, but you also don't care if you do get it. It's like, oh, I'm going to survive it. Yeah, you might survive it, but you're going to be in the hospital for weeks with no one that can come see you. That's shitty. I don't want that. You don't want that. So, there I am talking for a really long time. And I'm just here to tell you, today is election day. If you haven't voted by now, please go vote. It's the most important vote of our lives. Vote as if your life depends on it, because it does. It absolutely does depend on it. Our future depends on it. Your children's future depends on it. Your neighbor, your friends, everybody you know, even if people you don't know who are having their rights stripped or are in danger of their rights being stripped. Women's rights, LGBT rights, people of color, even your rights. If you're just a straight white male, you're having things stripped from you with this fascism that we have. You might applaud it, but you're worse off. You're voting against your own interests if you vote red. So vote blue. Don't vote third party. I know a lot of people want to, not go with a two-party system and say, I'm going to vote third party. There's not the election to stage a protest vote. There's not an election to, say, oh, both candidates suck, I'm going to vote for a libertarian. There's not that. Is not. We can't risk it. We need every vote possible for the Democratic candidate. We need to get every vote possible to get Trump out of office. We have ran out of time. We can't go another 4 years with climate science denial. Can't go another 4 years of health being stripped, healthcare being stripped, our viruses being mismanaged. We cannot do it. We can't go another 4 years of him drumming up actual homegrown terrorists. He praised and did not denounce the terrorists, and I will straight up call them terrorists. They're American terrorists. They're what was the term that someone used for them? American jihadists, hillbilly hollists or something. That wanted to plan and kidnap the governor of Michigan. And another group of them were planning a kidnapping of another governor from a Democratic state. And Trump didn't announce that. He thought it was a great idea. He kept on belittling the governor, still drumming up his people. I don't know what in our society made people look at that and think that's okay. But those people, I wish I can talk to them. They won't listen to this. They won't listen to the crazy liberal who was a Bernie bro who wanted so badly for socialist programs like Medicare for All and Green New Deal and free college, living wage. His people won't listen to me. But what in them makes them listen to that orange cream puff spouting these things and thinking that's okay? I watched Fahrenheit 11/9 the other day, Michael Moore's movie about kind of how Trump came into office and the type of things that surrounded the election and the other things around there. And towards the end of it, they had parallels of Hitler's rise. And what stuck out to me, there was newspaper articles before, World War II started, before Hitler really started, a lot of his atrocities. Articles saying that, well, all these things that Hitler was saying when he was campaigning to be chancellor, him saying, about him wanting to go against the Jews or that he didn't like the Jews and he would, start jailing Jews and stuff like that. That's not true. He won't ever do that. He's just saying those things. Guess what happened? So the things that people are saying now, what Trump may do if he gets a second term, it might happen. It might actually happen. I do not put it past him. He has a totally corrupt attorney general who will jail whoever he says he wants to jail. He has crackpot scientists on his side, supporting whatever he says about the coronavirus. He has a Supreme Court that's going to be on his side. And thanks to Mitch McConnell and him blocking hundreds of circuit court judges in Obama's years, Trump now has a bunch of circuit court judges on his side. We cannot afford more of this. We cannot. We have to stop the blood flow now. When you get cut in your neck, in your artery, and it's bleeding, we have to stop it as fast as you can. Because that blood's going to be gushing. It's going to come out more and more until it's all gone and you're dead. This country is dying. Democracy is dying. Vote for democracy. Vote for reason. Vote for rationality. Uh, vote because your life depends on it. Vote blue and tell your neighbors to vote blue. If they haven't voted, take them to the polls, have them vote. Bring a friend, bring a family. This is it. This is all the marbles. Our country is at stake. I can't put it any more plainer than that. Do it.